back again. Today we're going to take a look at how we can read in data from Cloudera, or Hadoop in general for that matter. I'm just simply going to start with add data. If I've already built some connections out there and I've granted permissions, somebody could already access this. They wouldn't have to know what my server IP is, what a username is to access the data, any of that. I could have pre-built something. We're not going to go that simple route. I'm going to go ahead and create a connection from scratch. As you know, there's any number of ways that we might want to connect to data or systems that we could use. A lot of times you might be choosing an OLEDB driver so that you can get something natively from SQL Server. You can use our native drivers to get to different things. We're just going to go ahead and choose our Cloudera Impala driver. I'm going to pass in my IP address. I'm simply going to give it a name. I would need to name this connection so that it's going to show up, and I might just say, hey, this is my native Impala driver to local VM. So this is just, I'm going to create some connection name to make that thing unique. When it comes out here, it's immediately going to connect to that server for me and start showing me different databases. I could choose a database that has some store sales maybe. Maybe I want to look at a quality. You'll see if there's only one table, it previews this for me, and I'm already looking at, I know I've got 2 million rows of data in that table. I can go to my default database, and maybe I choose a specific table. It's going to show me a preview of that, and I'm simply going to say, hey, go load that data for me. It goes off and it does its thing. I pull this data up and I can go ahead and I can start editing this. Immediately I've got my fields of data that are out there. I can bring any of this stuff back and start playing just like that. As you know, based on the associative model, I could click or choose anything. If I wanted to build something out fancier with this, I could certainly do that. So I'm going to go back into edit here. I'm just going to clear this stuff out. That's one way to get to this data. I'm going to go ahead and show you in our load editor how that happened. So when we do things through a wizard, it creates this auto-generated section of data. I can say, now let me break the lack on that. Dude, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Get me what I need. And so maybe I run a query like this, and it's got that query. I can edit this and say, no, I don't need to see the total employees. Just take that out of there, because I can pass any native SQL right to it. So I could say load data now, and I've changed my data model such that I would not see that field anymore. I just have code description and salary. I don't even have to use the wizard. As long as the connection's in place, I could take a command and I could just put this in here. And so I might create another table called quality data, where I simply pass it native Hive information. All I would have to do here is identify what that database is, and that's it. I tell it to go load that, and it's now run that. If I were to come back here, you'll see that I've got information out there. Hey, maybe I wanted the count of that information. Maybe I want the max of that. Any Hive SQL query you can run, you can manipulate and run through our script language and go get to that. More importantly, though, maybe I want information, I don't know, about the queries that I run. This is running queries. That's a way to visualize that data. But what if I want access to the metadata about the fact that queries got run in the first place? Well, I can, through a REST connector, go ahead and get that information as well. So for this, I would say I want to use a REST connector. It's going to say, what's my URL? So as long as I understand that format, I can use the REST connector to get to any information in any system via REST, including a Cloudera system about the information I've done there. And so I might want to say, hey, this is my Impala query REST connector. I can test that. I create this connector. Now all I need to do is go down, look at my connectors. I come in. You'll see that it is going to use JSON. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want that data. I'd like to see the actual statements that I use, like that one where I just ran this thing a couple minutes ago. I say insert into script. It goes off and builds the code that I need for that. I'm going to go ahead and load this data. If I come back to my application, sure, I could see the results of code, but maybe I want to see the results of these queries. Maybe I want to see the query ID. Maybe I want to see the actual statement. Maybe I'd want to see the time that it took. I want to see how long things took to run. And so I could, instead of maybe visualizing by this, maybe I want to build a table. And so then I could come out, I say, give me a table of this. I'm going to add my query ID. And maybe I want to start adding a few other fields like the actual statement. And I want to see the information about how long it took. And so I put the duration in milliseconds of how long that query took. I can look in my table here. Ooh, how long did it take to pull that data? Well, that thing was ran once. It took 101 milliseconds. Hey, I've pulled all the quality members data, that 2 million, and that data took about 90 or so milliseconds on average. And maybe I use REST to pull anything that I want out of my system. That REST connector can go get that metadata. So I can use Impala, I can use Hive, I can go get the data out of a REST connector about the queries that I just got done running. I can use a REST connector to find out status information about my system. There's a lot I can do. So it's not just whether we can run Hive or Impala or Spark or Solar. It's how do we do that? And the how do we do that is we have wizards, but I can also edit it and run any Hive SQL I want. I can literally slap Hive SQL into there. I don't need a wizardy interface, or I can use a REST interface. Hope you've enjoyed this and you've seen there's an awful lot that Qlik can do when it comes to accessing your big data.